So in today's discussions, Barry and I would be taking you through the 2022 and beyond in perspective. He would be sharing some thoughts on how he sees the year 2022 and the subsequent years following 2022 and what the expectation should be. Probably he might just look at his crystal ball and then give us some very exciting perspectives, allay some fears, and give us some encouragement as we begin the year so that we can run it through satisfactorily. But among others, we are going to touch on the industry recovery, which always take 2 steps back, 2 steps forward and take 3 back up until now. Up until Omicron came in, we were very optimistic. The recovery was on course. Now with Omicron, I'm not too sure whether we are moving forward or we're moving backwards or we are at a standstill. I'm sure Barry will share some perspectives on that with us. We're also going to look at the industry sustainability going forward. We're going to look at some aspects of safety and security, and we're going to touch briefly on the single African air transport market and the industry's competitiveness. Time permitting, ladies and gentlemen, we will assign some 15 minutes to question and answers. So as we begin the discussions, if you have questions, please just note the questions down, and at the appropriate time, I will reach out to you and you send us your questions. You can either post them on the Q&A tab or just hold on, and when we open the floor, you can raise your hand and ask your questions directly to Mr. Kashambo to respond. We will be brief and snappy so that we can cover a lot of grounds today. So without much ado, Mr. Barry Kashambo, you're welcome to the inaugural edition of SkyConnect 2022. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you loud and clear. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, my brother Raphael. And it's a tall order.
Yes, it is.
Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year to 2022. When you talked about discussing issues of 2022 and beyond, even the most famous of prophets will find this the expectations that we have had over time. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Very good. So thanks very much for the opportunity. We'll try our level best, as you mentioned, to see what we can discuss within the challenging time. My connection has been bad today. I hope the internet will be friendly. We have been having challenges in Nairobi since morning, but I hope we'll be able to go through this wonderfully. A happy 2022 indeed in terms of time.
Yes.
But when it comes to aviation, we are yet in challenging times. You mentioned that ICAO has had a big role in situations, and I was so delighted to see the participants that we have today. Wide range of participants, all the way from Montreal, and a lot of my friends, a lot of our colleagues are listening in, and they have a lot of questions, I suppose. And I'm looking forward to listening to your questions and topics of discussion, and of course to answer questions from the audience. Otherwise, thanks very much. We have had 2 hard and challenging years, and yet we are having yet more to come.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, 2 tough and challenging years and still counting. In fact, but in all of this, my heartfelt appreciation to ICAO and particularly ICAO, ESAF and WACAF regions for showing leadership and direction, and for galvanizing the industry in many ways to bring us this far. I can imagine what would have happened to aviation without the leadership role that ICAO has actually demonstrated this far. Now, just to recap, can you just let us know how ICAO has been able to drive us thus far and what lies ahead for us?
Thank you very much, Raphael. Now, let me rewind a little bit. ICAO has, for the last 77 years, of its existence, including the tail end of the World War II. We have had several challenges through the pandemic crisis, Ebola crisis, SARS crisis, and other economic crises. However, never before has aviation or ICAO faced a challenge like we have faced with COVID-19. This has been, it's an enormous and unprecedented incident that has brought us years back. And we are yet to recover. However, through experience, partnership with other industry players, and even our own internal robust structure, ICAO has been able to take its leadership and guide the industry from a very bad situation to a guided recovery. As you are all aware, the ICAO CAT recommendations and guidelines which are under some guidelines that will help. These have now evolved to the third phase, and some of the regions, such as Africa, very easily grabbed the opportunity, adopted the CAT recommendations, and customized them to their own situation. In our case, we had the African Union.
I think we have an internet challenges in Nairobi, as Barry indicated earlier. Please bear with us.
High-level task force, part of the process. And then we move. I hope the sound is good.
There's intermittent interruption pauses, but it's okay. I think we can just manage it.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We have moved from a situation which was very bad to some situation where we are having some kind of guided recovery. However, we must say that the successes that we have made, especially in 2021, were badly affected in November and December when the Omicron came on board. There are facts on the successes that we have made, despite the fact that there is a lot of interest to move forward. So ICAO will continue to provide the guidance and leadership. And there is a lot, I want to emphasize a lot of goodwill that we have out there from the industry partners. And the guidelines and recommendations are to a large extent successful in bringing the industry back to its feet. However, as we move along, I will highlight some of the challenges and areas that we need to put our focus on if we are to recover.
Wow. So there's goodwill after all. We're not alone. Global partnership is at play at this point in time, and everybody has their hands on deck. So we hope that with the continuous leadership of ICAO, we would get over these challenges. Now, what do you see as the perspectives of the industry in 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, very nice question, Rafa. 2022 and beyond. in 2020, we were looking at with a lot of optimism at 2021. And yes, for a large extent, our optimism played on our part and in our favor until the end of 2021, when things started taking another turn. However, the mechanisms that are already in place are good enough to sustain us to move into 2021 and beyond with success, with some caution. Number one, if we are to move beyond 2022 and succeed to recover and build a sustainable future, we must have harmonies continue to be divergent, and without harmony, we are going to have a challenge within the public sector and protocols that are required. Each country seems to have their own requirements and restrictions, and this is a big challenge. We have to have aviation industry and we are doing it in an accelerated manner. Will not stand the test of time. Requirements for vaccination and the proof of vaccination, the certificates that are being used, and the sharing of information needs to be updated to even higher levels. I wanted to mention that when you look at what is happening right now, airports, airlines, governments, and other authorities have completely different protocols in each of the states. And yet, when Africa CDC, African Union, and some of the regional economic commissions have already put in place mechanisms where we could have a uniform and harmonized format of acceptance of documents and requirements. So 2022 and beyond, we must get on the same page. We must have harmonized processes, uniform requirements, acceptance of tests or whatever is being done, and make sure that our digitization comes central. We have to digitize our processes. I think they provide this advanced kind of data. If we do not have digitization central in our travel requirements, in our travel deeds, including digitization within the safety and security requirements by the CAAs, is going to become a challenge. So we must work together, we must harmonize, we must.
Yeah, but I think in trying to harmonize and in trying to harmonize and digitize the processes going into the future, the challenge, as I have seen, seems to be that states are getting fatigued about waiting to have a harmonized process. Some states think they're doing better than others, and in the process, they don't want others to come and contaminate their processes. So they're jumping on to do their own things, introducing their own protocols. Now, who is going to help lead this harmonization and digitization process?
ICAO is already taking the leadership in collaboration with the World Health Organization. So we need to be supported to take this leadership, especially in time coming up with a harmonized format or accepted format of documents that are acceptable. PCR test documents, vaccination documents, a format that is going to be recognized and accepted by all states. I want to build on what you have just mentioned. Some of the states have come up with systems that are actually very, very good. I don't want to single out the states, but there are some states, we know them. There are some states that have got very good systems that are working. And one of the easiest ways would be to, can we adopt state A adopting systems in step B that are working instead of trying to develop our own. So we need some kind of leadership and championship, and African Union can help us on this, and Africa CDC, to see how together, World Health Organization, Africa CDC, ICAO, AFCAC, best format that we should take, and ICAO is interested in this. We are ready to take the leadership, and we have been providing this leadership to ensure that the documentation are accepted and unified. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah. Now again, on this harmonization and digitization, we are seeing that very good protocols that ought to be adapted, but others also have very dramatic and where is the parallel? Who are they trying to? We all in that we should use our test. We use it as a backup in vaccines, passport. We need to be able to travel out of the country. Even in most of these countries, less than 10% of the population is fully vaccinated. Now, is this going to help our industry?
Now, actually, that drives us to say Africa as a continent and the ICAO region offices in particular, if we take that into context, how are we going to help to get out of that situation? I would like to ask to advise and give this my perspective as this. If what you have just mentioned is very critical, states' reciprocity of requirement have made some that have good. Actually, in Africa, most of the states, the vaccination rates are still very, very low, much lower than the 2021 targets that they have put in place. And yet, we are beginning to see mandating of vaccination as a requisite for entry, especially at the airports. That's one other challenge that can be for a discussion for another day. Requirements by air, the requirements if you travel by road, they are so different. So we are seeing that by air, when you're traveling, some vaccinations become a mandatory requirement, and yet the vaccination rates are very low. So if this is going to be the case, is it going to be how is it going to be handled so that we can make sure that we in Africa we understand our situation, we know that our vaccination rates are quite low, and we handle that, and we make sure that the world accepts the condition we're in. However, travel requires that you go beyond the boundaries of the continent. And if we are going to do that, then it starts to become sure that vaccination is done in an aggressive manner and we get vaccinated, most of the people vaccinated. Because that should be one of our targets. Now, as you mentioned, harmonization of documents can be in place, harmonization of processes can be in place, but if the vaccination regimes and processes at national level cannot meet the demand, or they are very slow, or there is vaccination hesitance, it's going to continue to be a challenge. So there are a lot of things to be sorted out at national level that will build into our own processes in aviation.
Oh, wow. Then it's a tall order and we have a lot to do.
But it's doable. It's doable.
It is doable, I believe. It is doable. And with concerted effort and focused with the leadership of ICAO, I am sure we will get there sooner than later.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to look at the industry, the way things are evolving, just take a look at post-COVID. Once all of this is behind us, how do you see the aviation industry looking like? Some people say that aviation will never be the same again. It's going to be quite different from what we know in the past and what we know today. What are your thoughts on that?
Can you repeat the question? So at one point, the system froze. I couldn't hear you well.
Okay, the question is, post-COVID,
yeah,
how is the aviation industry, the aviation operations going to be like? Some people think that we are no longer going to see travel like we used to. It's going to be quite different, but how different, I'm not too sure. What are your thoughts?
We have one advantage in aviation, is that air transport cannot be replaced with any other mode of transportation. You cannot go back to travel by boats. You cannot travel by road across the continent. So our relevance continues to be there. However, as we talk now, traveling is not as easy as it used to be. Requirements are very high. You have to check in 4 hours before time. A lot of documentation that needs to be done. You must do a PCR before you arrive, and so on and so forth. The travel costs in Africa in particular is very high. The connectivity, the frequencies have gone down, at least in the recent times. So for the moment, we have challenges in travel. There are a lot of efforts being put in making sure that this is eased. Digitization, as I mentioned, is helping a lot. You can upload your documents on time. You can, we are coming to a regime where you'll be able to do some, to check online before you get to the airport to reduce on the time and the other processes. So we have to be proactive if we are to make our traveling life easier. And we as the industry, ICAO, operators, CAAs, must facilitate the traveling public to have this done. Otherwise, if we do not build the public traveling confidence, then we will have failed in our part to ensure that we get back the industry on its knees. Otherwise, the situation as it is right now, there are so many requirements that are in place that are not favorable to the travel regime that we had in the past. So as we recover, those challenges will continue to be there. But what I foresee, or what ICAO actually foresees, or what we're striving to do, is to make them easier as we move along, so that sooner rather than later, we can recover and have an easy way of traveling that can be, that will get us even better than what we had before the COVID-19.
Yeah, I always seem to have a fear, and this is my personal fear, that the way things are trending, if care is not taken, we might isolate the bulk of the African traveler who is digitally challenged. We have a lot of people who are not very good digitally, and we are digitizing literally everything in the aviation space of late. And we might have difficulty getting some of our traders and people who want to visit families and friends who are not very conversant with the digital technology, shy away or stay away from travel. Am I Is my fear right or not grounded?
I guess your fear is not, your fear is, I think it's well grounded. However, I think the bulk of the travelers, when you look at digitization has really gone wide. It has gone, it's wildfire. A lot of people are able to use their mobile phones, they are able to use the smartphones. If they cannot able to do it, they can be helped by a colleague or they can be helped by the airline. But we need to have some kind of flexibility to accommodate that percentage of persons that might not be able to upload before they come to the airport so that they can be helped at the airport. Because if you're going to expect everybody to have uploaded before they come into the airport, what if they don't have the know-how to prepare and cater for it? They are committed to ensure that aviation and border control are given the deserved attention. Because when it becomes that aviation is so restricted, it has got a lot of encumbrances, then it will start to become a mode of transport for the well-to-do. And yet, we would like to have it as an industry for everybody, every citizen on this continent. So the disparity within processes, the lack of adopting of best practices amongst ourselves, the lack of investment in some of the recovery processes might slow down that traveling appetite. However, we must be committed and we must go in with in a focused manner to ensure that we address these challenges. Otherwise, then the degeneration of the traveling appetite will not be in our favor and the industry will continue to suffer.
Wow. Okay. Now on 2022, do you think we're going to see more travel activity than we saw in 2021?
Now, that's a very good question. When you look at the good news is that right now we are faced with the Omicron, which is the Omicron variant, which is scientifically is being reported to be mild, although it spreads like crazy. It's fast spreading, but it's mild in terms of symptoms and the effect. So if we recover from this Omicron, build herd immunity. We are getting used to knowing how to handle the situation. Vaccination rates are going up. The vaccination rates are building up very, very fast, thanks to the donations and the government's purchase of these vaccinations. So it is likely, highly likely, that now that the airlines know how to handle the flights in this kind of situation, and now that we know what to do at the airports, now that the public is aware of what is required of them to travel, it is likely that we shall see another spike of increase of travel in 2022 and beyond. It's very, very likely. Yeah.
So now a friend of mine joked the other way that now we have seen Omicron. After Omicron, definitely will come Omicron. So assuming something worse than Omicron emerges in the scene, how is this industry going to go, progress forward? We've already taken a lot of punishment.
I'd like to look at this with a lot of pessimism, to be optimistic, and to look at it with a lot of faith that we are going to in a positive manner. The worst of the situation would be to get a variant, a Delta variant that could be fatal, and it's spreading fast and fatal at the same time. That would be a bad situation. We hope that that will not happen. I think the scientists are working in place vaccination that can be able to help us on to the in the near future. We're in unprecedented time. I was able to get my booster shot yesterday. So maybe one of the things we might see in the future will be maybe getting booster shots every 6 months or every 3 months, who knows. But I think all the efforts are going towards making sure that if any variant are going to come to get them. What do we do to make sure that we are able to address and prepare for the worst of the situations? If we are to get the worst of the variants coming in place, what are we going to do? How are we going to sustain the industry to continue operating even in the situation that we're in? There could be instances we might suspend everything, like in-flight catering might be suspended completely so that we can be able to maintain the health protocols. Some drastic measures might have to be taken as we move along so that we can be able to accommodate the persons to travel, because we really need to travel. We must be able to move from one place to another globally.
I just hope that we don't have to get there. Hopefully Omicron becomes the end of the road for us. Then we can see a resurgence of a vibrant aviation industry. But now let me switch on to something which I know is very, very, very topical.
You know, one of the other things we need to do is we really need.
Yes.
We need to observe the hazard is extremely important. So we have to take precautions. Yeah. Even
though there's some fatigue in actually observing the protocols, I think our safety going forward is dependent on how strictly we adhere to these protocols and listen to guidelines issued by the World Health Organization and Africa CDC. I think that is our surest way of guaranteeing that our business sustainability will not be in doubt. But now, ladies and gentlemen, sorry about the intermittent break in communication. It's due to unavoidable circumstances. My apologies for that. We are working in the background to see how that failing, please just bear with us. So now I know that ICAO has at the top of its agenda, even in these very difficult times, the concerns of safety and security of the aviation industry. And as Africa has made so much strides, so much gains in safety and security in the last couple of years, with some countries really made incredible progress. Now, with all of that is happening and with minimum resources now available to the industry to invest in safety and security, how is ICAO ensuring that our states do not drop the ball when it comes to safety and security? Barry, I think you are muted.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay. I want to echo your recognition that Africa has made tremendous progress in the last area of aviation security and safety. A lot of gains have been made. And this has been achieved not only under the auspices of the regional offices, but in a partnership with our important partners, AFCAC, AFRAA, the regional safety organizations, and the industry at large. However, all these gains are under threat if we do not take the necessary action. This can be very easily degraded because of the situation that we have been facing in the last 2 years. A lot of states don't have the financial muscles, but they technically very badly affected. As you know, that at one point the entire industry was grounded except for cargo operations. So commitment is critical, and commitment by all parties. Government commitment, CAA commitment, airline commitment, and even at personal level for the technical personnel to ensure that the gains that we have made can be sustained. A lot of these systems and programs have got financial implications. And so we must be able to provide at least the minimum of the finance requirements that are needed. And some of these monies are not there. So we need to get partners and donor support like we've had, despite the fact that some of the donors that we have relied on for a long time also have their own financial challenges. One critical thing that we must bear in mind, Raphael, and colleagues who are listening, is that come this year to change. I'll give an example of safety. The minimum safety, global safety targets, effective implementation has been 60% for a long time in the global aviation safety plan target. Come this, in the revised GASP, it's going to become 75%.
Okay.
The moment it is adopted, which is not going to be, it's not far from today, the bulk of the of African states will target. They follow suit, they will change. So most of the African states are in the 60s, 62, 65, 67. The target is going to move to 75. So we are going to have to make tremendous efforts. We have to put in extra effort to be able to match the new global targets. So there is that shift that is going to come very soon. And the gains that we have made over the years must be matched with the efforts we're going to put in.
Wow.
Place, despite a lot of us, 1, 2, they are going to be also affected by some of the states not being able to comply, to sustain their programs at national level. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But the regional office is there to help in every way possible. Back to you.
Great. Thank you so much for the assurance that the regional offices are there to help. But as the bar is raised higher, the onus is on our operators to up their game so that we are not caught unawares. Let's do the best so that we can be ready when the push comes to shove.
That's true.
Now let me move a bit on to these regional initiatives that are supposed to drive connectivity and improve aviation penetration on the African continent. I'm talking about the single African air transport market implementation. We've got quite a number of countries, over 35 now sign up. And I'm told another 18 or so who have committed to the memorandum of implementation. Yet on the ground, which is where we want to see action, we are not seeing action. What needs to be done in 2022 and beyond to get some action on the ground?
Yeah, short and straightforward. Connectivity in Africa is poor. There's no doubt about that. It has even been worsened by the COVID-19 situation. In a region like the eastern part and southern part of Africa, in my region, the region where I'm the regional director, the connectivity here was very good. We had one of the best routes that you could have was Nairobi, Entebbe, Nairobi, Dar es Salaam, where you had more than 10 frequencies a day. They have gone down to about 6, 7 now, and they need to recover. So we need to improve connectivity within the regions and interregional. The cost of travel is still very high in Africa. That is a fact that we have, and this can only be improved through the YD implementation and certain thanks to the African Union Summit that supported us 3 years ago and launched that program. However, if we are to achieve the SAATM goals and benefits, one, the SAATM must be operationalized. Signing of the commitment is not enough. That it must be operationalized. The committing is not enough. It must be operationalized. So we are seeing very poor operationalization on the ground. So as we have always mentioned, and I know that you are committed to that, Raphael, to operationalization of the SAATM through and through. Number two, IATA has made several studies. The facts that came out of the studies are true and must be taken seriously. There are benefits to SAATM. So states must embrace this system and say, look, there are benefits implemented. So in a nutshell, we can only increase our connectivity and decrease our travel costs if we do 3 must reduce levels, and 3, we must make sure that aviation is given priority at national levels as a mode of transport industry. Over to you, Raphael.
Thank you very much, Barry. I think your recommendations are very relevant, and I think that we need all stakeholders to work together to ensure that we get SAATM truly implemented to improve connectivity on the continent. Now, another area that before I go to take our questions from our listeners is the subject of industry cost and industry competitiveness in Africa. It's become a challenge, and it has always been a challenge that there's so much cost related to running aviation business. And by extension, it is also one of the elements that is actually suppressing the growth in connectivity and number of passenger travel. What needs to be done here?
Thank you very much. I'll give you some bullet points that I think, in the interest of time, that could help us guide us through this question. Very interesting and very relevant. As the saying goes, that history is one of the strongest teachers. We really need to go back to history and see where are we coming from. Africa traditionally has been characterized by individual airlines springing up at national levels, which ended up taking up a consolidated format. We saw it with East African Airways, we saw it with the Air Freight, we saw it with other airlines, Central African Airlines, West African Airlines. And those consolidated airlines seem to work. I think one of the best ways to go is consolidation. Can we work together and put our heads together instead of having divided operations? This is my perspective. Individual airline growth might not be a healthy move right now. If we are going to have individual states coming up with that, maybe it might not be the best of the options if we are going to recover and build air traffic in future. Competition is very, very tight, ladies and gentlemen. And we are competing with airlines that have got very deep pockets. They can be able to finance their operations and continue to move, and yet in our case, we don't have the resources to sustain operations. The cost of business of operations in Africa is very high. fuel, spares, expertise, charges, and etc. Is not favorable for African operations to operate individually and in a manner that is not consolidated. So
yes,
we must be deliberate. We must be secure consent. We must be focused to be able to apply airline operations that are going to be able to be competitive with airlines, leave alone developing the air traffic growth that is required on this continent. The game changer is not going to be separate and silo operations. The game changer is going to be united, consolidated operations of the airlines on this continent.
Wow. So in other words, the airline consolidation workshop that was held late last year by Kenya Airways and AFRAA was in the right direction. And following from that, KQ immediately, swiftly embarked on a partnership with South African Airways. And it actually seems to be turning heads in aviation circles. Is this the right direction to go?
I'd say it has to be, I would believe that it is the right side to go, but it has to be done strategically. So it's not a game changer, but it must be done strategically. It must be well researched. It must be strategically done. We must make sure that all the pros and cons are looked into. But I think it's the right way to go. And this is happening not only in Africa, but globally. It's a trend. It must be some kind of partnership and inter-airline relationship that is going to help them to perform more efficiently, more cost-effectively for a better result.
Thank you so much for that reassurance. Now let me go to our viewers' comments and questions. The first one is by Adil Jalil. And he's talking about when the recent COVID incidents came up, we realized that there has been some European countries actually were blacklisting African countries because of COVID. And he wants to know how ICAO whether ICAO can look into the requirements to customize regulations in order for PCR tests to be the means for travel. I think we've dealt with this by and large. I don't know if you have any comments on this.
Yes, you are right. We dealt with this by and large.
Yeah. Yeah. His second follow-up question by Adil is that the PCR labs have become money-making machines in some countries. How do ICAO ensure quality tests is being conducted in the respective countries?
You see, as I mentioned earlier on, we need to
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes.
Thank you. We need to have an acceptable format of PCR testing. Who qualifies to be out, and what can we do to make sure that whatever results are out there are going to be authentic? Of course, we still have some problems where fake results do appear in our on our continent. But by and large, we need to have a format, specifications of test certificates or test form results that are going to be acceptable. Just like as we have for passports. I mean, that's how it has.
Yes. Great. The next question is.
You have to follow. And
yes, go ahead.
No. I think once we have the globalized format, harmonized and uniform format, that should be able to be addressed.
Excellent. Now, a question from Jose Odini is saying that should we have a global level conference or something similar, maybe organized by the UN, to come up with global lessons learned from the pandemic and proposing mitigation actions for the way forward?
I didn't know Jose, my friend, was in this meeting. How are you? How are you, Jose, my brother? Yeah, that's a very good suggestion. Of course, ICAO as a leader has already done, we had a high level COVID-19 conference last year, conference that can be organized by the UN Secretary, United Nations Secretariat. It's a good idea if the UN Secretariat could partner with ICAO and all the other relevant bodies. That is a fantastic. Then we will have everybody on board. ICAO has already done its part on aviation, but we could have a global conference that involves all the stakeholders and all parties, so that we are all moving under one organ. I support the proposal.
Excellent. Yeah, great. Thank you so much for that. Now, our last question here is from Gabriel Tillman. He says, SAATM is one of the great enablers of a better organized air transport in Africa. It needs a lot of convincing that not everyone in the 54 states want to have their own national carrier, and as a consequence, block other African airlines to serve them. How is ICAO and AFRAA helping to build a united African aviation community?
Another surprise.
Yes, I think all your friends are here today.
I didn't know Gabriel is a seasoned aviator. He's a very welcome to this meeting, Gabriel. And I'm not surprised to have posed that question. Yes, we have. That's a huge challenge. As if you see from the previous question, response on individual states for establishing national airlines. That is a danger that we have. If we are going, once we have internal continental competition, each of the 54 states establishing their own airlines, then there will be restrictions because they don't want to have competitions. Our advocacy is that, is it possible for the airlines, for the states to talk together and see how they can help mechanisms where airlines are working that is cost effective, that is efficient, without having to be run under individual states' domain. That is the message. Yes, it's important to have the national pride of having a national airline, but if it is not meeting the objectives, if it's not meeting the cost, if it's too expensive for each of the individual states, is it possible for those states to have regional economic communities under which this could be done? So we are saying that ICAO, AFRAA is saying, yes, we want to have a service, but let it be done under an organized format that is going to help the growth of the industry. So Gabriel, we are looking, our message is please develop the airline industry, but do it not in silos, but in a manner that is going to allow a focused and steady growth. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now, one last question from Adam Abdul Karim before I give you the opportunity to share with us some takeaway thoughts. Adam Abdul Karim says, do you think PCR test is too much expensive in Africa compared to other continents? And what can ICAO do for lab cost reduction?
Abdul Karim, I think, yeah, thanks very much for attending this meeting too, my brother. The issue here, actually, to the contrary, the tests in Africa are not as high as outside there. I'll give you an example. The PCR test in Canada is 200 Canadian dollars, PCR test. In Africa, in Nairobi, I had one yesterday, it's $60. I had one in Entebbe 3 weeks ago, it was $30. So it's comparative.
Yeah.
It's not totally very higher than the rest of the world. However, I think the way to go is to have free PCR tests. That's what we should be gunning for. States, I think the way forward is to have states providing free tests. Because even at $30, even at $50, there are so many individuals that might not be able to afford it. So our advocacy is at any time, be it when you want to travel, be it when you want for information purposes, or you're just not feeling well. So our goal should be to promote free PCR tests globally.
Great, thank you so much. Free PCR tests globally. Because the issue of COVID is not brought about by aviation. Aviation just simply was just caught in the middle of it. So why should we be saddled with the cost of the testing for this on travelers? It should, the focus should be free for the global travel purposes. Thank you so much for this. Now, before I let you go, I want to give you the opportunity to share with us some key takeaway thoughts. First, for African governments, the regional organizations, the airline community, civil aviation authorities, in fact, non-aviation stakeholders like the WHO, CDC, and others. What should we be doing more of or less of going forward 2022 and beyond?
Thank you very much. I see we have just 1 or 2 minutes. Let me wrap it up this way. First of all, I would like to acknowledge that Africa, and this should be, it's on record, Africa was the first continent to respond to COVID, to coronavirus. That time it wasn't even named COVID-19. On the 20th of February 2020, we held a meeting in Addis Ababa, a ministerial meeting on this virus that had appeared.
That's right.
World Health Organization had not even given it a name.
Yes.
And African ministers made a declaration, including using our knowledge on the Ebola. So Africa was the pioneer, and we need to keep that leadership as Africa when it comes to it. However, we have slowed down along the way. I would say that all stakeholders must get involved, from governments, from operators, World Health Organization, Africa, everybody must get on board to see how can we together tackle this issue. Because it is no longer an aviation issue, it is no longer a health issue, it is a global issue. It affects every single sector of our life. So we all need to come together and see how can we address this big challenge. you need to have a COVID certificate to go to a shopping mall. So this is how far we have gone. We commend you for the effort that you are making, because you are planning a laboratory for the discussion on how Africa can address the challenges, especially those associated with charges and fees on the continent, and how we can get out of this quagmire of the COVID-19 situation. The second one I would say that is critical is, as I mentioned that earlier on, governments in Africa must make aviation a priority. It is a priority industry. We cannot do without the air sector. So it must be given deserved attention, and harmonization of processes, both at aviation, must be done at the continental level to make sure that we have good health protocols, border control requirements, and aviation requirements done in a uniform and harmonized format. Number three, we have always had the ICAO CAPSCA program, which deals with communicable diseases. We used it very effectively during the more will come in the future during our times and beyond. So we need to make sure that we are ready and prepared. We have to consolidate the gains we have had and improve on them. We have made a lot of navigation efficiencies, security, and everything. We must consolidate them and even improve on them if we are going to be global players in the aviation industry, formidable players within the air transport industry. My last one will be the issue of the cost and connectivity. We have reduced fees and charges on this continent to make sure that the cost of travel is affordable to everybody. Our operating costs must be brought down. And AFRAA and its leadership and coordination with AFCAC, they need to be guided to see how can they put in place operations that are going to make connectivity on this continent better and robust as we move along 22 and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Barry, for these thought-provoking conclusions. All stakeholders must get involved in ensuring that we get aviation back to where it ought to be. African governments must make aviation a priority, and we need to consolidate the gains that have been made so far. And finally, we need to make travel costs more affordable and competitive so that our industry can be restored to where it ought to be. Thank you so much, Barry Kashambo, Regional Director, ESAF for ICAO. And to all my guests, thank you very much for your time and for participating in this discussion today. Once again, my sincere apologies for the interruption in the sound quality. And we reassure you that subsequently we will work on this to ensure we have minimal disruptions as we go on in the future. But until we meet again next month, a similar forum, thank you so much for everyone for coming, and I wish you a very nice day. Thanks so much and all the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And nice to see many of my friends in this forum today. Thank you.